Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage, Jeff Hammond.
Good night, good evening. Please find your seat. Welcome to Lifting the Mask Gala for the Quell Foundation. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for making your way into our ballroom. While you are all finding your seats, I'm also going to welcome those watching at home. Thank you so much for being here. I know you all have sweatpants on and Triscuit crumbs on your shirt. We all look amazing, but thank you so much for watching wherever you are. Tonight truly is a remarkable evening. While the purpose and the reason is troubling for many, what we're able to do because of your continued support has a lasting effect well into our future. We're so excited to share so many of those stories with you here tonight on such an amazing evening here in Minnesota. So thank you. Give yourselves a nice round of applause for, quite frankly, just getting dressed today. Well done. Most men have pants on. That's really... We start with the little things, really. How many got into their dress and went, wow, this actually fits still? Good, all right. Half of you were like, lifting the mask, is this COVID related? What is going on over here? But in all seriousness, it is truly an honor and a pleasure to be with you. I was with you in Philadelphia for those of you who joined us there. It was a spectacular evening. We raised an incredible amount of money, and more importantly, I think we continue to raise more awareness. I am no different than many of you. I am also personally impacted and affected by depression and mental illness, whereas my cousin took his own life as a result of that as well. So being here tonight is personal for me, and as I imagine it is for many of you. So thank you once again. So what are we? Who are we, right? You're going to hear a little bit more about that from our founder and president, Kevin Lynch, here shortly, but the Quell Foundation ultimately strives to reduce those number of suicides, drug overdoses, the incarceration of people living with mental wellness or mental illness. By lifting the mask, as we did here tonight, and sharing our stories, as you'll hear tonight, we are helping to change the stigma and the effect and the impact that people hear and feel when they hear mental illness. So we believe education truly is the key to making an incredible difference and an awareness. Millions of people face this every day, and we're having a crisis, and the education is a huge piece of bridging that gap. You being here this evening, and those of you watching from home, you are the true key to empowering the Quell Foundation to continue its mission and its message. So thank you once again. We have an exciting program for you here tonight. You'll see me a couple times. Aside from the many stories you're going to hear, we also have a live performance from an incredible Minnesota icon, Dessa. I think she was a little unnerved earlier when I said every person that has told me about you says, in Minnesota, it's Prince and Dessa. And she was like, ah! But you do have an incredible evening tonight, and thank you once again. So it is my honor to introduce our founder of the Quell Foundation to share his comments and his thoughts and where we are. I know he loves to do this, and he loves his 8-minute intros. That's why you flew me out here, buddy. Please give a nice warm round of applause and a welcome to Kevin Lynch.
I wasn't prepared to have my ears up on that big screen, so I apologize to the people at home. The first thing we do every year is take a moment of silence to recall those people, to recall those people in our life who may have lost their life to suicide or drug overdose. So if you don't mind, if we could just take a moment, silence, please. Thank you. You know, about 75% of the people in this room here this evening are new to the Quell Foundation's Masquerade Ball. I'm thrilled that you could all be here tonight. We're quite grateful to you. What I will share is that this will be an emotional roller coaster ride for you, but it's going to be special. Fortunately, as Jeff said, we'll be topping off the evening with the performance by Minneapolis' own Dessa. And back, she's in the middle of a national tour, and she's here to join us tonight, and we're thrilled about that. Before we start, I thought I might tell you a little bit about the Quell Foundation, for those of you who do not know. Quell, to bring balance and order to chaos. The irony of holding a fundraiser in Minneapolis to support our nation's first responders is not lost on me. But we're here to be part of the healing process for the city. We appreciate the community for having us, and we're grateful to you. As Jeff said, I was going to introduce myself, but he's done that. But what I thought I would do is tell you why Quell Foundation. So to reduce the number of suicides, overdoses, and the incarceration of people living with a mental health diagnosis. So how do we do this? We do it by normalizing the conversation. We do it by removing the stigma. We do it by lifting our mask, as tonight's honoree, Brian Murray, will be doing. Quell was formed because my son said to me, nobody cares about people like you and me. That broke my heart for a couple of reasons. One is because there are 52 million Americans right now over the age of 18 living with some form of diagnosis, a diagnosable mental health illness. And he felt alone, as many of us in this room do. We all know someone. And second, because he made that statement to me on a phone call from prison. So Nick, you would think I'd get better at this, but I don't think I ever will. So Nick was diagnosed with bipolar disorder when he was young. At 17 and a half, he was sentenced to 8 years in a men's maximum security prison. He spent 6 of those years held in isolation for behaviors consistent with somebody that's not medicated. When Nick was released, he came home to Cape Cod, and we weren't able to get him the help that he needed because we know that there's a dearth in providers. That's part of what the foundation's trying to do, bridge that gap. So in the absence of treatment, a lot of folks will self-medicate, drugs, alcohol. 103 days after he was released, Nick was found with a heroin needle in his arm. He didn't die, but they sent him back to prison. They didn't give him the help that he needed. And that was a tough, really tough time for me because I'm a stereotypical guy. I didn't have a plan B because I thought plan A was pretty good. It wasn't. And I ended up calling a suicide hotline. Fortunately, as a veteran, I was able to get the help that I needed. I'm not going to dump a bunch of statistics on you, but I am going to give you a little bit of perspective. And I'm going to need a little participation on this one. How many people here have been in the US Bank Stadium? It's pretty solid. The next time you're there, look around the entire stadium. It's packed. And then close your eyes and imagine that they've all left us twice. In 2019, we could fill US Bank Stadium twice with the number of people who died by suicide or died by overdose. That's what we're here tonight to make an impact on. and I need your help to help us continue the work that we're doing. In less than 6 years, the Quell Foundation has become known nationally for our prestigious scholarship program and our educational documentary series. We have distributed, this is awesome, we've given away $2.2 million in scholarships to students across the country. We have a survivor scholarship for students who lost a parent or sibling to suicide. We have a fighter scholarship for students who have a mental health diagnosis or are currently in treatment. And 2 years ago, I started the Athlete Fighter Scholarship in honor of Archer Amorosi. So Don and Addie, we won't forget him. And we have the Bridge the Gap Scholarship. The Bridge the Gap Scholarship for students who are coming into this space to be the next generation of mental health care professionals. We're really fortunate to have one of our scholarship recipients here with us this evening. Tonight we are also going to preview our second documentary, Lift the Mask, First Responders Sound the Alarm. I'm going to ask you to take a moment to look at the world through the lens of our respected first responders, our firefighters, law enforcement officers, EMTs, our dispatchers. These are men and women who sacrifice their life to protect and save ours. They have the 6th highest rate of suicide by profession in the country. 60% of firefighter suicides go unreported. Tonight, you're going to be introduced to Joe, Chris Van Ness, Michelle, Lynette, and retired Oklahoma City firefighter Chris Fields, tonight's guest speaker. You will meet the faces behind the badge. Before I finish, I'd like to say thank you very much to tonight's presenting sponsors, FirstNet, built with AT&T, and to US Bank. I could go on about US Bank, but what I will share with you is that 5 years ago, they chose to support the foundation. I was just some dude with an idea, and they said, we want to help. And for 5 years, they have been supporting this foundation. So in return, I gave that money to the University of Minnesota because they were just establishing a new integrated behavioral health dual degree program. And it's an amazing program. Tonight you're going to hear from Ferdowsa. So proud of you, Ferdowsa. You're going to hear from her, a recent graduate, and also a Quell Scholarship recipient. But together, what I want you to know is that we have literally developed the resources that this community needs to continue to heal. Special thank you also to Sarah Ratner and to Reva Dominski. I hope that tonight is everything you hoped that it would be. And for the first time, I think, shame on me, I want to call out Renee Wilk. Where are you, Renee? And Sarah Marshall. You're about to see a video montage of everything we've accomplished in the last year and a half during this pandemic. There are 3 people who work for the Quell Foundation. All of this could have never been done without Renee and Sarah. So now we'd like to show you the video montage of some of the things that we've been able to accomplish in the last year and a half. Thank you.
Our Lift the Mask Voices of Heroes in a Silent Pandemic podcast is an opportunity for healthcare workers to openly discuss the compounding psychological and physical trauma associated with continual exposure to the COVID-19 pandemic. In each episode, mental health professionals engage with our guests to provide advice on how they might practice self-help and coping skills while they continue to work on the front lines of this pandemic. The Foundation was proud to partner with Able2, a leading provider of high-quality virtual therapy, to make therapy programs available at no cost to our nation's frontline healthcare professionals and first responders. The program was a success, filling all 30 positions in less than a week. With a substantial gift to the Department of Psychiatry and Behavioral Sciences at the University of Washington School of Medicine, the Quell Foundation is funding the expansion of training in collaborative care and telehealth through the development of a population health curriculum focused on the BIPOC community. One of the more remarkable things the Quell Foundation was able to accomplish this past year was our 9/11 Ride of Hope. Traversing 6 states and nearly 250 miles over a 5-day period from September 7th to the 11th, 20 cyclists from across the country, including first responders, suicide attempt survivors, veterans, and mental health care providers, carried our message of hope, resiliency, and awareness to firehouses, law enforcement agencies, and hospitals down the Eastern Corridor. This event aimed to educate, inspire, and empower first responders to recognize mental health crisis warning signs amongst their own. Stops along the route included the 9/11 Memorial and Museum in New York City, Princeton, New Jersey, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Wilmington, Delaware, Baltimore, Maryland, and finished with a wreath-laying ceremony in Arlington, Virginia. The Quell Foundation is also thrilled to announce that FirstNet, built with AT&T, is now our presenting sponsor for our upcoming documentary, Lift the Mask, First Responders Sound the Alarm. With more than 200 hours of interviews and B-roll footage, this second documentary for the Quell Foundation will tackle mental health in the first responder community in a way that's not been seen before. Set to debut in the spring of 2022, we cannot wait to show the full-length documentary to audiences across the country. We're so proud to share all we've accomplished since the last time we were together. We can't wait to show you what else we've been working on.
I'd like to introduce to all of you Dr. Anna Corey, Director, First Responder Health and Wellness, FirstNet, built with AT&T.
Wow. When I was asked to give opening remarks, they did not tell me it was going to be live streamed. No pressure there. You guys look amazing. I mean, look at you all. Not afraid to face the mental health problems facing our nation, especially in the public safety realm. This is incredibly important to me as the Director of First Responder Health and Wellness with FirstNet, built with AT&T, the nation's only wireless broadband platform built with and for first responders. We're dedicated to this problem. We have deployed hand in hand with public safety to answer our community's crisis when there's man-made, natural disaster. Our public safety professionals run towards those problems without thinking about it. And there's a burden associated with that. It comes with a price of PTSD, depression, anxiety. It's tearing down our public safety profession because we see these individuals as heroes. They would not hesitate to tell any one of you all to call for help when they need it, when you need it. But if you ask them to do the same, the attitude is, no, I'm good. I've got this. I'm strong. I'm tough. They hide behind the mask of heroism because that's what's expected of them. They're taught in the academies that this is what public safety is. We are tough. We answer the call. It's a part of the work we do. They take it for granted. They like to say, suck it up, buttercup. This is the life. And yet, the rates of PTSD, depression, anxiety in the public safety profession far exceed that of those in the general public. And they're dying by suicide. It's getting to them. What they face today in their communities is not the same public safety events that they responded to 50 years ago, 100 years ago. Our world is different. Things are more complicated. And it's hard. And it's hard to unravel what they see. One of the most common things that I hear from our first responders is that it's very hard to find mental health professionals that understand what it's like to see a child who's been killed, to see the mangled remains of a body, to see that day in and day night, whether it's through fire, an accident, a mass shooting, any sort of tornado, wildfire, or other issue. They see these things, they smell things, they taste things, they hear things that you and I can't possibly understand unless you've been there. And one of the things that I'm very, very proud of FirstNet sponsoring the Quell Foundation and the work that they're doing, thank you, Kevin, is to address this head on, to make a difference in the lives of first responders for the work that they do, and recognize that, yes, it is hard to answer our community's call. We start this conversation here with all of you all. I'm proud that you're here because tonight we're all lifting the mask to talk, to listen, to learn from one another. And when we talk and listen and learn, we care. And through caring, we are there for each other. We have compassion, and that is how change is made in the world today. FirstNet is an incredibly proud sponsor of this effort. Join us and the Quell Foundation as we lift the mask on first responder health and wellness. Today, the stigma stops here. Thank you so much.
We're supposed to have an S on our chest, and no matter what, everything's, going to be okay. Hey, we're the heroes. We suffer many times in silence, the things that we see.
I was first on a murder scene, I've seen people die in accidents. I've seen people burnt. My days were filled with just crisis, one after another. Realizing that that cumulative stress was really starting to affect me, was really hitting me hard.
On those, police shows, the shootings, and they're back to work a day later, and everything's fine. Dealing with those images, the thoughts, it's like cancer, and it just ravages the body and your mind.
All this cumulative baggage builds over time and can actually push people to the level of taking their own lives.
I just suppressed it and went to work every day and act like nothing was gone, and that went on for almost 8 to 10 years.
There's all kinds of things that are happening, that unimaginable things that everyday people don't see. That's our reality every day.
Every day when a first responder buttons up their shirt, they know they're going to see something they shouldn't see, hear something they shouldn't hear, smell something they shouldn't smell. Even if they do every single thing right, if they do everything the way they're supposed to do, people die. And that's traumatic in and of itself without even seeing what they see. It's traumatic knowing that when you go to work, someone's going to die even if you do it all right.
A portion of the west side of the Pentagon has collapsed.
On 9/11, when we rolled up onto the scene, we had to gather our crews together, report to command, and get our assignment. I was one of the collapse team leaders, and we were on the second floor where probably 30 feet inside of the building, the floor between the first floor and the second floor was penetrated by the explosion. I noticed a little area 10 feet east of where the floor had been penetrated that was kind of lighter in color. It is where one of the occupants of the building had been caught by the impact and the explosion. And it was white dust, and as I got closer, it was in the shape of a human skeleton. That was all that was left, and it was dust. It gives you an idea of the level of heat that happened there and how it takes a while to incinerate a human body. But I ended up having dreams about that area because I just felt like the whole thing just felt evil. What we saw in the building where the plane impacted, there were images of people who had not survived that I will never forget.
The cumulative trauma of seeing really ugly things has a lasting effect on a person. You sleep with the lights on, you hear this in your sleep sometimes.
The nightmares I was having, especially after the shooting, were so intense. I hated going to sleep, hated it, because I knew those nightmares were going to be waiting for me, and they would pick up right where they left off the night before.
It's not one thing that you can have a nightmare about. It's not one thing that you're going to have a reminder about. It's everything. And it's every day you're going to wake up and do it again and again and again. Can you imagine that much grief in a day? You have to find ways of coping with what you see, what you hear, what you have to incorporate into your own brain, into your own memories. A lot of first responders will tell you they don't look at faces anymore. They will work on a body. Because the minute you look at a face, look at their eyes, you connect. So you have to do things to disconnect. I can't tell you how many times a patient will say, I made the mistake of looking at their eyes, and that's where the PTSD comes in.
It was April 19th, 1995, and I distinctly remember it was a Wednesday. It was like a scene from a horror movie.
The chaos in downtown Oklahoma City did indeed resemble Beirut after what police believe to be a 1,200-pound car bomb ripped through the 9-story federal building. 500 people were already in their offices, and at least 50 children were in a daycare center on the 2nd floor.
As we were coming to the scene, we could see people, just hordes of people running away from this building. And there was hundreds of walking wounded. And everybody was just in a state of shock. So much different from any of our, what we call our routine calls. It was just, even the first responders at first, to see a 9-story building and a third of it gone and a 30-foot crater. There was the photo of me and Bailey Allman. A lot of the issues I struggled with from that photo were just a lot of guilt. Erin Allman is Bailey's mother. And she was never allowed to really grieve privately. When she went to identify Bailey, she wasn't able to hold her because she was, it sounds so horrible, but at the time she was considered evidence. As I find these things out, I'm just carrying this guilt with me. The guilt of being singled out, firefighting, any kind of first responder, such a team effort. I wasn't the only one that, held fatality or deceased person out of the building, yet it was caught on film. It weighed heavy on me because I didn't want to be singled out. I always wanted to be sure that, people realized that that was not the single event that happened that morning, was Bailey Allman dying.
Suicide rate for firefighters is as high, if not higher, than for veterans. It's about 20%. If you look at the statistics for fire, police, EMT, white middle-aged men are already at high risk, and white middle-aged men are more typical firefighter, police, EMT. And then you add in childhood abuse, you add in drugs and alcohol, you add in already having mental health issues, you're going to have a population that's going to be at an incredibly high risk for suicide.
People who have PTSD, if treated properly, generally go on to live full and happy lives. But when you add moral injury to it, you add guilt and shame for something. Early studies show that someone who sustained moral injury is actually more likely to attempt and complete their own suicide than someone who was diagnosed with just PTSD. In 2010, there was a collapse in the area that I work in. It was a parking garage. And there were workers inside. They were building this garage, and one of the workers got caught in he was eating lunch, and the garage collapsed. And it collapsed onto his legs. I remember going in and watching this guy, basically, he was losing his life, getting his legs cut off by a trauma doctor to try to save him. And he's on, the phone with his wife before we sedated him, telling his wife how much he loved her. And I went home, and I don't get the chance to process it. I've never had time to process that. But I know that when I drive into a parking garage, I white knuckle my steering wheel and anything I'm holding onto, and I have to brace myself to drive into a parking garage. These are the scars that first responders carry.
The dispatches are forgotten about because, they take the call, but they're not directly there. But they hear the agony. They're the first person at that end of that 911 call. So they live that emotional roller coaster too, and you kind of lose sight of the fact that they're probably dealing with a lot.
People don't stay in this field long when they realize what it entails, that we have the responders' lives in our hand, literally. And some people are just like, I can't handle the stress of someone potentially dying, and it's my fault. I've delivered 2 babies. I've done CPR on a multitude of people who have either lived or died. You just don't get that closure. You just hope that they're okay when you hang up the phone, and sometimes they're not. So you just have to move on.
If an employee has a hard time and asks the organization for help, you will likely either end up at a desk or lose your job. This needs to change.
We should be having a peer support team that's fully
engage in understanding and working with our officers. We should be able to respond to officers after serious incidents and get them in for debriefings and talk about it. And if we keep at it as professionals and listen to doctors and other people in the business to constantly improve the mental wellness and our ability to respond to these, we can save some people's lives and families.
Talk to somebody professionally, because it can save your life. I don't want to see anyone go through what I went through, being too proud to admit that I needed to get some help.
I cried at my desk. I called out sick to work. I had all the patterns of somebody who was suffering, all of them. And nobody either knew how to speak to me or chose not to have a conversation with me. Everybody should be able to ask how you're doing and be prepared for someone to say, I'm not okay.
People are slowly recognizing that PTSD is real. I think PTSD was something that was just swept under the rug. Let's just not talk about it. It's nice to see that there is awareness, that they have raised awareness to acknowledge the fact that people suffer from these things, and that I might not have any bullet wounds or I wasn't stabbed, but yes, my mind, it's affected, and I'm certainly not alone.
One of the truest examples of bravery is asking for help. We can make a change here. It is time to change the culture. There's a way to get through this. Get help. Ask for help.
So what you've seen here tonight is just a brief preview of what is to come in the spring of 2022. I think I could speak for all of us here that I said, wow, probably about a dozen times in that 10 minutes. So if we continue to say that, then we continue to be aware, and that's part of the issue, right? That's part of the process of getting to the help. You met this next speaker. He was in our video. Chris Fields is a former firefighter for the Oklahoma City Fire Department. He was the gentleman that was captured in the photo with the iconic photo, as it were, with the young Bailey Almond. Chris has now dedicated his life and travels to speak to rooms like this, as he discusses the brutal realities of a life spent responding to citizens in their darkest hours. Would you please welcome Mr. Chris Fields.
Good evening. Beyond thrilled and honored to be here, first of all, and Dr. Corey, where are you at? Oh, in case you're wondering how you did, you nailed it. So you don't have to wonder anymore, you nailed it. And Jeff was wrong, I've never spoke to rooms like this. This is a beautiful room. I usually speak to old, disgruntled firefighters and cops and all that. So, and like I said, I'm honored to be here. And just to let you know how much Kevin and the Quell Foundation mean to me, I'm in a tie. So that ought to tell you something. After 5 wear in Oklahoma is, in the fall, is sweatpants and a hoodie. So this is about as after 5 as we get. And number 2, my Sooners have a home game tonight and I'm not there. So that's how much Kevin and the Quell Foundation mean to me. You know, I couldn't get mine to stay on, but we got the little pins that say stigma. And I've used that word 1,000 times, and I thought, it'd be nice if I really knew what stigma meant. So I made myself some notes. I usually don't do notes. When Sarah contacted me about speaking and everything, I thought, oh yeah, it'd be great. And she said, you think you could, prepare something like 8 to 10 minutes? And I'm like, I usually get up there and just ramble from my heart and from my brain for like 45 minutes or an hour. So I wrote some stuff down, and I'm sitting here going, I can't do this, So I'll refer to it a little bit, but this is not my wheelhouse. But I'll go. Stigma is defined as a mark of disgrace associated with a particular circumstance, quality, or a person. It happens all too often in first responders, and it did in my situation. And what I hope with things like the Quell Foundation, this documentary, bring to the forefront, it's not to prevent trauma. There's no way to prevent it. That's whether you're a first responder or everyday life, there's no way to prevent it. But I hope it brings awareness into reaching out before your life's in shambles or before the wheels fall off, which I did. A definition of a life in shambles for me was, and I always get emotional talking about my family, but for me it was 2 years separated from my family, my choice. It was 2 years of me depending on alcohol and prescription pills to get me through the day so I could show up at work and keep the brave face on at work, but I couldn't do it at home. Very few people, except for close friends in the fire service, even knew me and my wife were separated for 17 months. That's how well I hid it when I went to work. And also a life in shambles was also me using those alcohol and those prescription pills to try to end my life. When I woke up the next morning, I was disoriented. But I had this sense of calm over me too, and I knew that I just had this feeling that everything was going to be okay. Don't ask me how you try to kill yourself one night, and the next morning you just feel like everything is going to be okay. But what I did was I called my wife, and she answered the phone 6 o'clock in the morning, and of course things weren't the best, so it wasn't hello, it was what do you want? Well, I told her, I said, I want to come home. And I'm standing here today because she had the grace to forgive me. And when I reached out, she was there for me. I often wonder if I would have been that big a person if that would have been reversed. And it's still things that I struggle with today, forgiving myself on things I put my family through. But once I reached out and got the help I needed, I've diagnosed with PTSD, depression, anxiety, suicidal ideation, and all that encompasses. But I look back, and that stigma that kept me from reaching out, what I used to consider a weakness, that I didn't want to let down my family or my profession. How could I be a protector if I couldn't even, help myself? But what I learned is I can't protect my family, and I can't do my job if I don't take care of myself. And that was it was a long road. It's not easy. And I always tell everybody that when I speak to first responders, they think, well, and treatment doesn't always mean going away for treatment. It doesn't mean you'll be diagnosed with any. It's about reaching out and just talking to somebody. Sometimes just talking to somebody is all you need. But I waited until, like I said, until the wheels had fallen completely off my life. And fortunately, I see change. In the fire services, we're a little behind law enforcement. There's conferences and rallies all over the United States in law enforcement and all that, but fire service is a little behind. But with people like Kevin and the Quell Foundation stepping up and saying, I want to be part of the healing. Like I say, this documentary, I hope it touches millions and millions of lives. And I'm honored. I've only met a few of the people in that documentary, but I'll promise you, they'd say the same. We're brothers and sisters. That's just the way the first responder world is. And even when I was at treatment, which I did go away for treatment twice, that's how good I was. But it was, what I did was heard, stories from police officers, firefighters, medics, dispatchers, sheriffs. It didn't matter. The trauma took a toll on us. And it was pointed out in the documentary several times, which I'm so glad. It's not a singular event. Sometimes that singular event helps tip the scale, but it's not a singular event. It's about that accumulative trauma. And for me, that's what it was, from childhood issues to multiple calls in a 30-something year career in the fire service. So, and what I found most amazing, and this goes, like I say, for first responders. It doesn't matter if you're not a first responder, even in your personal life. I spent 2 years pushing away everybody that wanted to help me. My family, embarrassed, humiliated them, friends. But when I reached out for help, the first ones that were there for me were those very family and friends that I'd pushed away. So keep that in mind when you're deciding if you want to reach out. I promise you, somebody will be there for you. And again, man, I just want to thank Kevin for having me out here. Again, and the Quell Foundation for all they do. And I say by far, man, the prettiest room I've ever spoken in front of. So God bless each and every one of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. And before we get too far along and we introduce our next speaker, I know that I know her well enough that she is also an incredible professional and understands the term hangry. So while many of you are being incredibly polite and not eating your salad, I would invite you that if you would like to, you certainly can. Dinner will be served, and you're welcome to eat, but we don't want a fundraiser for hangriness later either. But that said, as Chris had alluded to, and as the documentary suggests, how dare you eat while I'm speaking? No, I'm kidding. There is an amazing and incredible chasm right now when it comes to not only acknowledging and supporting that PTSD, that mental illness and the like, but as Kevin is often fond of saying, the last thing we want to do is bring awareness to it, send them across the street for help and get their ass kicked by not having a professional able to service their needs. So one of the most amazing things that Quell Foundation has done is creating the scholarship programs that Kevin alluded to, and amazingly, again, let's applaud that, $2.2 million. So when I come back out here later and I ask you to help support the further cause of that, you'll know why. Because we want to get to 3 tonight. Oh boy, it got real quiet in here, didn't it? Yeah, we've locked the doors. We're not leaving until we get it. And you at home, I know where you live, so get ready to give your part too. So listen, one of the things that is amazing is this next speaker, who I'm so proud to have gotten the chance to meet, but you wait until you hear her story. Providing that bridge and that pipeline for professional services in mental health is paramount. Fardowsa Hassan is a recent Quell graduate from the University of Minnesota. Go Gophers! Although I did ask her if they won today, and she's like, I don't know. Did they win? Okay, good. See, we're off the hook. We're good. Because I took a nap. In August, Fardowsa was awarded the National Board for Certified Counselors Foundation Minority Fellowship Program for Addictions Counselor. Yeah. That is a really large business card, just so we're clear. She has also earned a master's in integrated behavioral health and she is here to speak about her journey to becoming a mental health care professional. Would you please welcome to the stage Ms. Fardowsa Hassan.
Thank you, Jeff. That was such a sweet welcome. Whew. Wow, there's a lot more people than I thought would be here. Bear with me as I get my bearings together. But good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I want to thank you tonight for taking the opportunity to support a cause that we're all so passionate about. I want to thank the Quell Foundation for giving me an opportunity to share a little bit of my story with you. As you've heard, my name is Fardowsa Hassan, and I'm a Quell scholar who recently graduated from the University of Minnesota in the College of Continuing Education and Professional Studies in the Integrated Behavioral Health Program. I have always been passionate about working with people in the healthcare sector. Before I ventured into this counseling field and started my graduate school in the IBH program, I, too, dealt with several personal encounters that impacted my transition into this role. While I studied psychology during my undergraduate degree, I didn't really understand what I wanted to do with it. It's so typical coming in freshman year. What do you want to do? Undecided or psychology? That's the route I went. I didn't really understand the passion that was going to come along with this. I knew that I was passionate about learning about the study of the human behavior and what contributes to us being who we are. I majored in psychology and anthropology throughout my undergraduate studies and still wasn't sure what's next. As you can probably imagine, all the different grad students, undergrad, that are currently struggling with figuring out, okay, what do I do after college? What's next? That is until my younger brother started struggling with addiction and mental health. That was the deterring factor for me. So a little backstory on my little brother. His name is Abdi Khani, Abdi for short. He was always one of those active children who struggled with maintaining his behavior throughout school. As you can imagine, got into trouble a lot, was probably in detention here and there. But he was also undeniably intelligent. He graduated from high school just at the tender age of 16. However, that did not stop him from experimenting with drugs and struggling with his own mental health. In hindsight, I understand the many contributing factors to his substance use. Lack of resources with mental health. Severe hyperactivity and impulsivity are among the most common reasons for referral to mental health professionals in early childhood. When he was younger, there were many instances in which my family was approached about looking into his behavioral concerns, teachers that wanted to provide resources for him, asking if he was diagnosed with ADHD and other developmental disorders, which at the time was very shocking to my family, as you can imagine. I come from a very culture in which mental health is considered taboo, and there is not an opportunity to even talk about what it means to be dealing with any sort of mental health. So that word again, stigma. To some degree, the impact of ADHD is influenced by the expectations of community, the flexibility of caregiving environments, and accommodating developmental atypical patterns of hyperactivity, impulsivity, and inattention. My family was very afraid of the labeling and stigma that can come with a child who was diagnosed with mental health disorders and did not understand the process of seeking assistance with his mental health. Again, reiteration of that shame, cultural shame. One of the barriers my family encountered in finding the appropriate treatment modality was the lack of resources that were available and culturally appropriate too. Many family members assumed that he would grow out of it. Many reiterated the statement that he's a boy and boys are troublemakers, again, putting them into a category, but he would eventually grow out of it. He struggled to maintain his mental health significantly over the years, As someone learning about the importance of the developmental period and the time sensitivity of children with maladaptive behavior, I acknowledge the lack of support he must have felt in that moment, not having someone to hear him out, not having a shoulder to lean on, especially understanding the importance of developmental milestone and how developmental disorders could be a contributing factor to his addiction today and impact of his mental health. However, the most important factor in my brother's mental health journey centers on the lack of informative and culturally appropriate services available to families with similar circumstances. It was facing the spiral of his mental health over the years that prompted my interest in wanting to learn about mental health and addiction. I knew what it felt like to be looking at his personal challenges from the family's perspective, but I wanted to learn more about what it meant for someone living with addiction and mental health. I needed to understand how to be an ally to these individuals and learn ways in which I can provide service to them that makes them feel empowered, that allows them to feel like they're being heard. I knew that social stigma and cultural influences and religious concerns were going to be factors that people could bring up as to what were some of the reasons that mental health had a hold on these people. Some even mentioned what are some holistic approaches you can use. Again, reiterating the fact that it's so quick to undermine mental health. I was really overwhelmed with the minimization and how it always was the fault of the family or the person dealing with addiction, when rather than providing an opportunity for them, putting them in that box again. I will admit that even my family struggled to comprehend what to do in his circumstance and how we could support him. Some family members relied on turning to religion and assumed that would cure him. Others shared that he wasn't sick. He was perhaps faking it. Imagine telling a child you're faking it. This experience changed my perception on what it means to be dealing with addiction and mental health in my community. I no longer wanted to be a bystander, watching many families struggle with what they can do to support loved ones in similar situations. I explored opportunities for getting engaged, and I was able to find that through this program. I chose the Master's of Professional Studies at the University of Minnesota and utilizing the IBH program because it gave me the chance to further my career and my impact in my community. I knew that I wanted to continue my education right after undergrad and pursue a master's degree. This program suited the needs of students like myself who were interested in providing clinical support while gaining valuable skill sets along the way. I'm excited about what this program offered for me, from doing group projects to completing assignments that allowed me to reflect critically on my personal growth and development. As time went on, I did learn how to develop as a clinician and learning what it means to gain my counselor voice. The program helped me become a well-rounded student that's versed in the field and taught me to continue to develop these skill sets along the way. I was grateful for courses and assignments that allowed me to personally reflect on how addiction impacted my life. As someone who has a family member in recovery, these assignments helped me gain a better understanding of what it means to live with addiction. It made it easier for me to be vulnerable, especially to share my story with you tonight in this setting. When it comes to dealing with a family member in addiction, it's not always the easiest thing to talk about, especially if you yourself are experiencing it. So thank you to everyone that was brave enough to share their own personal stories. It helped me analyze my family's standpoint on addiction, understand what family members with addiction are going through in the community. By learning about addictive behaviors and how mental health can further contribute to that, I was able to understand what it means to have insight into this. My aspirations for the future and for professional growth, my aspirations for the future and for professional growth center on gaining more knowledge pertaining to the counseling profession. I do plan on seeking a doctoral degree one day and learning more about what impact I can have in the community. But now I just want to let you guys know, I hope you understand the impact you're making tonight in students like myself. By working with an organization like the Quell Foundation and taking part in providing scholarships to students who are geared for greatness, I want you to understand the significance in which you have lightened the financial burden by giving them to focus on the most important thing, learning. The Quell Foundation has made an impact in making access to resources and further education for students like myself across the nation. You all play a significant role in my story, whether you know it or not. And I'm sure the stories of many families across the world and many scholars who are aspiring to make a difference in their communities. Your generosity has helped me to help others and give back to the community. I hope one day I'll be able to help students achieve their goals just as you have helped me achieve mine. Thank you.
And you didn't pass out at all. I told you you'd do great. One more time for Fardasa, please. While we're at it, please continue to eat, but I also want to take a moment because there are a number of students in this room here tonight. If you are, in fact, a student and you are studying in the mental health industry, would you please be so kind as to stand up? I can't thank you enough. I know Kevin is thrilled because ultimately you are truly the impact. You are the end result, and we hope that we continue to build on that momentum. It is truly remarkable. It is so necessary so that we don't have people getting their ass kicked across the street. So I know we told the people at home, and I'm looking right at you right now, that we would keep this under an hour, and we're 2 minutes past. I apologize. But before we let you go, and in front of all of you as you finish your salads, I want to please welcome those of you watching at home and have met Chris, have met Fardasa, have gotten a chance to view the documentary and see what we're trying to accomplish. While you could not be here tonight, we want to invite you to participate in our fundraising efforts as well. And quite frankly, what I'm hoping for is that you at home will set a level for which this audience might be able to match or exceed. So, what I'm asking you to do, and you don't have to do this yet because your turn will be coming later, but for those of you at home, on your laptop and you're watching it on our platform, there is a Donate Now button. You are welcome to hit that and donate at a level that's comfortable for you. If you'd rather, you're also able to text Lift the Mask, all one word, Lift the Mask, to 91999. You'll be able to pay through Apple, through Visa, through cash, check, barter system. We don't take teenagers. However, we welcome you at this time to give at a level that's comfortable for you. We want to thank you for joining us here tonight. We hope that you enjoyed it. We hope that perhaps there were a couple of moments tonight where you went, wow, we really do need to continue these efforts, and with your help, we will do just that. So from us here in Minneapolis, we are going to continue our party. You can continue to stream Netflix throughout the rest of the night. So thank you so much. I look forward to sharing what you have donated and how you have started our fundraising efforts off tonight. Thank you so much at home. Good night.